All right. Good afternoon. My name is Mike McClanahan. I am the state president of the NAACP, also a national board member. And I live here in Baton Rouge. I'm from the town of Zwolle. So I know all about Zwolle. I know all about Louisiana because I traveled as a northern Louisiana to Baton Rouge. But as the state president, I travel all over the state of Louisiana because we fight racism, discrimination. And it's prevalent in all of our society. We have units. I have about 40 adult units and 18 youth and college chapters that I coordinate. We're not out of work. As a matter of fact, when I became the state president, we had 15 active units. We're up to about 40 now. And I get a call every day because another unit wants to come on board. Not because they just want to wear the NAACP emblem, because you can't legislate stupidity. It's ingrained in them. You can't legislate ignorance. There are some parts of Louisiana I could take persons that look like me. They will not make it out. That's a reality. There are places I travel. I'll make sure I leave before dark. That's a reality. If I, as a black man caught in some of these small towns or rural areas, I'll be gator meat. I'll leave before dark. If I'm stopped by a police officer, I'll put my hands on the wheel. Yes, sir. My son, the same thing, because we live in a society that black men are seen as mad, we're wild and crazy. That's crazy. That's just not the case. My son is 6'1", weighs about 280. If he gets out of his car, you will be intimidated by him as a white man. I'm intimidated by his daddy, right? Only thing that he understands, my daddy gonna get me because I got age on him. But as someone that stopped on the side of the road, a police officer sees him, is intimidated. But he's just a baby. He's my son. He's just 22, 23. And so to say that I live in a society where there's no racism, that's crazy. Even in religion. There's a church in Baton Rouge that had an older population, Baptist older population. Behind the church were a brown and black population. The kids from the older generation weren't coming to church at that church. And so somebody made the recommendation, why don't you go out and evangelize the community behind you so that we can keep the church moving? Guess what they decided to do? Close the church down. What is that? What is that? That's real. Instead of inviting members inside to evangelize and fellowship with them that did not look like them, they decided to close the church down. That's in religion. And so for you to say that this bill here is going to help Louisiana, if I look at the stats, we in Louisiana, we rank first in everything that's bad and last in everything that's good. Why? Because we try to legislate everything. I appreciate you, Representative Edmondson. So let's have a dialogue. But for you to sit down and talk to me, you got to understand who I am. You can't sit down and say, Mike, well, you've done pretty good, but you don't understand my shoes. You don't understand what people see. You don't understand I have 3 degrees. You understand that I take care of my kids. My daughter's a nurse practitioner. My son's about to graduate from Southeast. You don't know that. You just see a black man, but I like to tell you that I know that all blacks ain't good and all whites ain't bad. I know the NAACP was started by white folks in 1909 because they understood what was happening to black folk. 1909, white people started the NAACP. You come to our convention, you see a little bit of everybody. Because those persons there are fighting for what they know is right. Any day is a good day to do what's right. This bill doesn't do any of that. You can't teach somebody to do what's right. It has to be in them to do right. You can't put them in some water and say, I'm a dip in the water, I'm gonna say a few words over you, you're gonna come up changed. Only God can do that. I can send you to jail all you want. If you don't change within, you come out, you'll be the same old low down person that you did when you went in. We have to at some point in time talk about these things. We have to have serious conversations. We can't have them just today and forget about them tomorrow. It ain't gonna happen overnight. It ain't gonna happen overnight. We can't come to the state capitol because that was a time when no black folks could come in this building. Come on, let's talk about that. This is a system. I can promise you, this body, if all the white legislators got into a room and I walked in there, somebody's gonna be whispering, "Who's that black guy right there? Well, he don't need to be in here." I promise you that. I know that somebody gonna say he don't need to be in this room with us. Cleo Fields, I remember when he became a congressman, he told a story. He said, as a young black congressman, he was up in D.C. and somebody said, "Young man, go get me a cup of coffee." A white guy told him to get him a cup of coffee. He said, "Yeah, when you find a person to get you one, tell them to bring me one too." That's rare. They say, I walk into a room with a whole lot of white guys. They crack jokes about me because I'm lighthearted. I say, okay, yeah, but I also like to curse too. But it's all done in fun, but they understand the point. We have to have a serious dialogue about Louisiana. We have to have a serious dialogue about education. If we don't have those serious dialogues that bring in a whole multifaceted of people, we're just spinning our wheels. And the persons that we hear from Bessie are my friends. They're right. You can't talk about education, don't include everybody that has education agenda. If I talked about policing, I'm going to bring in law enforcement. I ain't going to bring in a doctor. I ain't gonna bring in a plumber. If I'm talking about, we have to. We got to get smart. I love Louisiana. I heard somebody say it there. I love Louisiana. I'm a down Louisiana, but I'm a down Zawali, right? But until then, we must do what's best. And I think right now we're not doing what's best. We're just doing what's cute. Cute ain't gonna save no souls. Cute ain't gonna get us from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. Hard conversation and doing what's right. And I promise you, this is not doing what's right. It's only getting me texts and say, "Mike, what y'all doing over in Louisiana? They're still dumb." Thank you.
Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman. My name is Jamal Taylor. I am the Education Chair for the NAACP of Louisiana and an educator by profession. I have a BA in History from Southern University, so this is an interesting topic to me, and an EDM from Columbia University in New York. As I think through the conversation that I've heard today, I thought it was very paradoxical that a person would say something to the effect that we can't let this stuff inundate our schools, this indoctrination, but when their bill is discussed by the Teacher of the Year, we hear from them that they didn't know where the information came from that was contained in their bill, right? If you can't valuably describe to people where the information you have came from, then you're doing the exact same thing that you're describing that other people are trying to do. That's why education should be left to educators. But in this state, we have a fundamental problem of everybody thinking they can do what educators do. The medical board is staffed with doctors because they're the experts. The bar, lawyers. They govern themselves because they're the experts. Nurses, same thing. But here in Louisiana, everybody can be a teacher. Might be a testimony to why we're number 50 or 49 this year. We battle back and forth for last. But when I think through this bill and what it does, and I want to thank you too, Representative Edmond, for what you said earlier, we got to have an honest dialogue. The bill on its face is a piece of legislation that has grown out of the resentment of movements that have occurred in this country, and it is racist. Period. I'm not going to mince words on that. If people are uncomfortable in conversations or dialogue on race, they should investigate that themselves. I have never, in my time as an educator, seen an educator have a discussion on race where the students are having the sort of discourse that was described here today in describing this bill. What I've seen is adults do it because it's learned behavior. Our children are naturally inquisitive. They want to dialogue and like each other. It's when we grow up that we become violently racist or unable to hear the opinions of other people. And so when I think through the fact that this legislation made it to this committee, it's a testimony to our inability to be reflective about our past, from whence we came. I heard some commentary today from members of the committee that sounded terribly like justifying people's necessity in being uncomfortable and utilizing that as tool to justify this legislation. Folks, make no mistake about it. There is legislation federally and at the state level that deals with discriminatory action and if a person feels discriminated against. There's legislation on whistleblowing where you report behavior that you believe is inappropriate. What this legislation does is give cover to people that are uncomfortable and don't want their face to be seen. Mr. McClanahan, several other people have testified today and have been willing to show our face. I know another time in our history that people were unwilling to reveal who they were too. And so what I'd say to you is, as we accept testimony from people, we shouldn't just be taking people at their word that folks called them. We shouldn't just be accepting legislation that people don't know where the words of it came from. I certainly will not be looking to the Heritage Foundation on how to fix the schools in Louisiana. I think we have educators for that. And so as we think through this legislation, I'd encourage you to be reflective about intent, because it matters. Words, they matter. Our ability to rise above this as a state exists. There's something unique and different about Louisiana. We can disagree on something and have gumbo after. Okay? Let's not become the buffoons across this country that devolve into nonsense and BS pieces of legislation. We're better than this. Legislate a raise for teachers. Find some way to get more of them in the classroom. Legislate something that helps our children to read better. But to be wasting 5 hours today on what is the equivalent to me of toilet paper is a waste of our time. I yield back.
Right on, brother.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Maxwell Chiardulo. I'm the Director of Policy and Communications with the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, which is a statewide nonprofit that fights housing discrimination. And part of our work includes educating the public about housing discrimination and segregation, and that sometimes includes being invited into classrooms to talk to students about recognizing discrimination and discussing why students grow up in neighborhoods that look vastly different from others. I'm going to try and keep my remarks brief, but I think they mostly cover the fact that the incredible vagueness of this legislation and the confusion that so many folks have mentioned, specifically about this divisive topics piece. The bill says that you can't call the United States or the state of Louisiana systemically racist or sexist. And Representative Owen, I appreciate what you added when you said that what is systemically racist or sexist is still up for discussion. But that's not what the bill says. The bill just says you can't talk about it. And so folks have mentioned redlining as something in our history that was a government program. It was a system that systemically benefited white people and disadvantaged black people. It benefited my grandfather. It meant he could be the first person in his family to own a home. And that wealth was passed down through my family and has benefited me. It's possible that hearing about that might make someone uncomfortable, might make them feel guilty. Well, no, sorry, let me be clear. Someone might feel guilt, but we don't get to make people feel things. That's your prerogative, what you feel. But this bill says that if someone feels something, that somehow a teacher can then be liable for it. And we've had a lot of conversation about history, but I want to make sure this is contemporary as well. Just about everyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with the Road Home Program, which was run by federal and state governments to provide relief to homeowners after Katrina. It relied on a funding formula that was found to systemically disadvantage black homeowners. And as a result, the U.S. government had to pay $62 million in relief. Is that a system? It was certainly something operated by the state and the federal government, but it's not clear to me whether that could be taught as systemic racism. LSU is also a state entity. There's a pretty clear argument to suggest that they've systemically ignored the pleas of women who've been sexually assaulted and harassed at that institution. It would seem to me that's something that we would want to teach about. We work often with the Apartment Association on a lot of bills, and their number one concern when we tried to add protections to our housing laws for survivors of domestic violence or survivors of sexual assault is that the language is too vague and it creates too much liability for them. They say, we don't want to be responsible for deciding who to protect and who not to protect. And frankly, this bill makes their concerns about vagueness look like child's play. And so, unfortunately, I'll also add that I don't think the amendments clarify anything. As one example, Amendment number 20 says that no one in a school can advocate for or against a group based on that group's political ideology. So does that mean you can't advocate against the Nazis or the KKK? They're a group with a political ideology. It would seem that's something that we would want to be able to advocate against. I think what's most depressing about the bill is that it does a profound disservice to our students, because what it teaches them is that when our government gets things wrong, when it perpetuates discrimination or devalues women by covering up sexual assault scandals, we should sweep it under the rug and not talk about it. We all get things wrong. Strength is being able to acknowledge your mistakes and learn from them. Weaknesses is when you're too afraid to talk about what you got wrong, so you shut down conversations about it. So I hope you'll vote against this bill and teach our children that strength comes with acknowledging our mistakes and always striving to improve. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.